Lithuania is a farming country, but we had all kinds of experts. There was a huge, huge paper mill called the cellulose factory. It was one of the major things. We had a huge rubber industry of all things. Mammoth is about 800 years old, the city. It was a nice place to live. It was near the Baltic Sea. We crossed by ferry to a peninsula. We had a summer home on the peninsula. I adored my grandfather. Many times he came to the peninsula, and around 4 in the morning we went amber hunting on the beaches, because amber was washed out of the water, and we children absolutely adored him, and he could show us a star and make a whole story out of this one star. In the summer, we spent a lot of time at the beach. We went to each other's homes. We played, you know, when we were smaller. We went camping. We went to movies. My parents were very good people. There was no such thing that anybody coming to our door or my grandparents' doors who needed help, who didn't get help when it was at all possible. These are my 5 brothers and myself. You see, my brothers, they went to private school, so did I, and we were expected to wear clothing like that. This is my brother Joseph. He was absolutely super brilliant, and they said that one of these days he would be a very famous scientist, and he was going in that direction. Even when he was a little boy, about 6 years old, he was a very nice, sweet person, very gentle. Lazar was a ladies' man. He was so gorgeous. Women, or girls, mind you, we are talking about 1937, women were like bees to honey. Older girls and women, yeah, it wasn't so good, you know, at that time. He was very, very bright. Gerard, brother number 3, was very nice, and he always sang. He didn't even have such a good voice, but he sang. You could hear him 2 blocks away when he was coming home. This is my brother Bernard, studious, brilliant, quiet and funny though, and fantastic in sports, especially in gymnastics. My brother Leo would have been a stand-up comedian. There was no such thing as him crying. He always had something funny to say. This is me, Nessie. I was the only daughter among 5 boys. I was close with all of them. I never even knew the word sibling rivalry. Life was good for me, but there was an enormous poor Jewish population, very poor. They worked on the lowest level. I mean, shoe repair people, mechanics, tenant farmers. I mean, they were poor. We were good Jews. Now, we kept the high holidays, and we kept certain traditions. My grandfather and also my grandmother had beautiful voices, and they could have been singers or whatever. And we sang, and we were really happy. My brothers and I had as good a childhood as I would wish for anyone. And what I remember and treasure the most, the absolute security that I felt as a child.
I come from a city called Białystok on the eastern part of Poland, and it was a city of 100,000 population, of which 50% were Jewish. It was an industrial city. We had a lot of textile factories and leather factories. You had Jewish schools with Jewish languages and Hebrew schools with Hebrew languages. There was 2 beautiful synagogues and a lot of small synagogues that people were going to in the neighborhoods. My father was, under the circumstances at that time, he was well-to-do. We had a family of 5 siblings. I had 3 brothers and a sister and myself, and I was the youngest one. And we lived very comfortable. Always very happy days. There was a very close relationship with my siblings, who were much older, but still a very close relationship. Saw each other very often. Later, of course, when the children came along and my parents, of course, became grandparents, it was a very nice, close, needed family. My father was special. He was special as far as I'm concerned. They were telling me that when my mother was pregnant with me, my father had to go out of town. And he said, if it's a boy, I don't want to come back, but if it's a girl, I'll come back. And I was born. My school days were very happy. I attended school, and after school, I was a member of the drama circle and then the geographic circle. Friday nights, we used to have dances. That was already in the 8th and 9th grades. And of course, everyone got together, and we had some weaknesses to us, the boys. In 1938, I had a romance. My father used to tease me. He used to say, which one are you going to marry today? Every day I have another boy that I said, him I'm going to marry, this is the one. And it changed, but it was all in fun. It was all in fun. I come from a semi-Orthodox family. I was raised very Jewish. I spoke Jewish at home. We celebrated all the holidays, of course. My father attended his kind of synagogue, a small little synagogue, regularly. Saturday was very holy. When I always believed that if I'll do something on Saturday this was not permitted, something will happen to me. But the thing that I was very happy to do was when Passover came along, you know, you had to change dishes. I laughed when I was a child. I loved to do that. I loved to, you know, it's funny. Like now the children have imaginative friends. I would talk to the dishes. You have to stay here because you belong to my father. You have to stay. And I remember that I was talking to them just like crazy, but I loved it. I loved Passover very much. And the songs that we were singing in the family around the table. It was very happy times. I had a very happy childhood, and I have beautiful memories. And this sustains me. When the refugees came and told us of all the atrocities performed by the Germans in Western Poland, we didn't believe it. It was exaggerated. It couldn't be. It's not happening. Our parents couldn't believe it. At the time, you know, Germany was the most cultural, the most advanced in any field, and we all looked up to the Germans, very much so. The older generation remembered the Germans from the First World War. They were so nice. They liberated us from the Bolsheviks. The people were so much afraid of the communists and the Bolsheviks. There was so many pogroms coming from the Russians. And they believed that Germany is the one who will liberate us from all that. They always find excuses for Germany. They could not make peace with that. The Germans are against Jews. They are absolutely out to annihilate the whole Jewish nation. They could not comprehend it. They could not make peace with it.
The adults didn't detect it as fast as we did as kids. At first, for some, the Nazis came in 1933, but I think even in 1937, nobody believed that they believed that things are getting bad in Germany because Jews couldn't sit on a park bench, they were thrown out of the school, people couldn't go to a Jewish doctor, but nobody could really believe that this was occurring in Germany, the heart of Europe, the most civilized country. You know, I used to say our war started in 1941, which is true, but our problems actually started in March 1939. Hitler took the district of Klaipėda, or the district of Memel. So really, since I've been 14, things were not normal there. But nobody ever, ever, ever believed or even dreamt that something could happen, what happened.
We didn't suspect that Hitler will attack Poland because there was the peace that had made with Stalin. They will not fight each other. They came into Poland in 1 week. Poland was taken apart. The Germans marched into Bialystok the 1st of September. They put themselves out in the middle of the big plaza in the middle of the city, and they did not do anything. But already by coming back from the first night, when the bombs fell and all that, my father came running. He says, "Children, this is war." There was a proclamation that all the Jews were to settle in a certain part of the city. Part, let's say, that normally would probably accommodate between 10 and 15,000 people, would accommodate almost 50,000.
Lithuanian guerrillas came to our place where we lived, and we were literally dragged out. There was no arrest warrant. There was not a piece of paper. Hey, you goddamn Jews, come out. And they had guns and clubs. And now others were ordered to go into the ghetto. We were dragged to the ghetto. It was put in the most horrible part of the city, in Kovno or Kaunas. We had electric fences. We were guarded. Maybe in one shack there were 30 people, where possibly 4 would not have been comfortable of living. Food was almost non-existent. Sometimes some friends from the outside smuggled some food in, or you smuggled it under your clothes when you went out for slave labor. If they caught you with food, the guards would kill you for that, just like that.
We called them the Saturday Roundup, that rounded up about 1,000 men, supposedly to take to work, and they marched them out of the ghetto. It was so hard. We just, I don't know, we trusted the Germans in spite of everything else. I remember my father begged the assessment to take him into that group. But he says, he's too old, he can't walk. So it was work, right? So my father stayed home. But the Jews never came back.
The 9th fort in Lithuania was the worst. They surrounded certain sections and took them up to the 9th fort and murdered them. When the people got to the fort, they had to totally undress. The gold was yanked out of their teeth. Then they were lined up, totally naked, near these huge ditches, and they were machine gunned down. Let's say you are in the ghetto and you would resist, fine, and you know you'll be murdered. But if you know that your children and your wife and your parents and your neighbors will be murdered because of your deed, then you do it. I resent it deeply when I hear, now why did you go to your death like sheep? Why didn't you fight back? But we were unarmed people of certain countries. We were not a little country in a country. We had no guns. We had nothing.
gave ourselves up. And we were marched off to a field. My eldest brother was trying to escape and he was shot. And my father tried to hide behind a door. And after the group went by, of course, he was found out, he was brought to that place. He still had a golden coin with him. And he said to me, maybe this will save you. You're so young. I don't need it anymore. He gave it to me. And of course, I never saw my father again. We came to the railway station, and there were cattle carts already. And we went in, about 300 people in a cart. There was a little window, and everyone was trying to go to the window for air. And we were given a pail just for the physiological need and nothing else. The doors were closed. You had machine guns with soldiers on top of the carts and on the steps of the carts. And we started to roll. You know, I stopped living. I didn't have to eat, I didn't have to drink, I didn't have to go and for physiological, nothing. I completely stopped acting as a human being. I mean, my physiological needs were gone, completely gone. We were standing, we could not sit because we were so fully packed. We couldn't even, if you wanted to go to that pail, you couldn't reach it. We came to Camp Brzeźin. Of course, we didn't know whether it was a forced labor camp or an annihilation camp. Brzeźin turned out to be a forced labor camp. It was separated men from women. All the belongings that we had was taken away from us, and we were taken to the showers. And coming out fast, you had to go, everything was a very fast tempo. You grab anything you could, a dress or just a slip or just a skirt or just a blouse, to left shoes or to right shoes. Just everything had to be fast. We came to the big field. We were counted and assigned to barracks. We were not allowed to go into the barrack until 6 o'clock. The barrack was a long, long hall. In the middle was like a stove, but it was never lit. On both sides were bunks, 3-story high, and every bunk had a sack of straw and an army blanket. We were handed a dish that was an aluminum bowl that was to serve to drink from, to eat from, to wash with, and we were assigned to walk. And I was assigned to work in a barrack where we were sewing on buttons to the uniforms for the soldiers on the Eastern Front. And we walked till 5 o'clock. Before the dinner was served, there was people who had not accomplished the quota were handed out lashes, depending upon how much short they were. And many of them, of course, did not get up. And then the dinner was served. People were bringing big kettles of so-called soup, that if you were lucky enough and got it from the bottom, you would find a peel of some kind of a vegetable. And also a loaf of bread, 2-pound loaf of bread was for 4 people. The bread was always moldy, always green with mold and stale, of course. And that was our ration. Now, you wanted to keep this piece of bread so it will last you for the whole day to eat. So where do you hide it so nobody would steal it from you? So we put it under our heads or whatever, or inside of our clothes even. But we had company in the barracks. There were big rats, field rats, who were just as hungry as we were. And very often we would get up and the bread was gone.
One day, obviously my parents had already arranged something. You know, when they slipped off their star to go to one of our maids' home. Actually, she was our cook. A true Christian Catholic family. I was told by my parents that arrangements have been made for me to be hidden with Magdalena, Genoveva, Magda we called her. And at first I didn't want to go. I cried. That's when I cried. And I was angry, and I said, I don't want to go. I'll die with you all. You know, why should I live? And they made me understand that it was my duty to survive, and it was easier for a young girl to survive than a young man. The boys didn't have a chance in a million. And so one day when we were out of the ghetto working, and there were some drunken guards, and I knew we were not counted, I slipped away and went to their little house. They took me in. They had 3 small children, and they could have easily talked, and that would have been the end of the family and the end of me. And at that time, the birth certificate in Lithuania was as important as a passport as now. And they told me that their priest gave them the certificate, and he didn't make up a name. It was actually a name of a girl who was registered with the church in another part of Lithuania. So in case the authorities checked back, that girl was registered. And at that time, the Nazis started really to enforce the law very harshly about anybody hiding Jews. Even if it was a 6-week-old baby, they killed the whole family, from children to parents to grandparents, so people could see and not do it. They didn't kick me out. I said, I am endangering everyone, your children, your parents. They wouldn't let me. So how they did it, don't ask me. They managed to borrow a car, and we drove to Vilnius, and they let me off maybe 8 blocks before this address. And once I got to the house, there was nobody in that little house. It was another shack, so to speak. And the furniture was turned over, what little they had. So I figured, they were not Jewish, of course. I figured the Nazis must have arrested them. I didn't know what to do, because within a couple of hours there was a curfew for everyone. And I passed a children's orphanage. And at the window there was a sign, German-speaking maid wanted. And I walked in there again. I spoke German fluently. And I got the job. So I worked there for a couple of months until I had to flee again.
Rumors came that there's annihilation camps, that Jews are being killed there. Somehow we knew about it. So we were packed again into the cars, and we were traveling southwest to Auschwitz. And we came into the big hall, a completely empty, bare hall. We were stripped completely naked. We were shaved from all the body hair by men. We were so sure that we are going to the gas chambers. It turned out to be showers. We came out. We marched off to the quarantine field, and then again assigned to the barracks. And on the morning or in the evening would come Dr. Mengele to perform his selections. We knew Dr. Mengele is the one we called the doctor of death, that the people that he takes out are going to the crematorium, or experiments were performed on them. Somebody once asked me, would you recognize Dr. Mengele? Not for the life of me, I wouldn't. I was afraid to look at him, because she thought if you don't look at him, maybe he won't look at you. And of course, through the night, we'd hear the screaming and the crying from the barrack, and in the morning, it was all gone into the crematorium. The air was full with the smell of burnt flesh. One day, there was an announcement that we have to be registered. All the barracks are come in the center of the field, and we'll have to be registered. So we went, we were registered, and instead of registered, we got numbers. So this is the numbers that we had gotten. And it was like needles put in, every number was points. And every point was a needle stuck into your arm. And that's it, we lost our names already too. We were nobodies.
I was called into the administrator's office. He was very pleasant to me. And he said to me, rumors have it that the Jew under false papers is working here. And the only person who could be it is you. Are you a Jew? And I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, yes, I am. And he said to me, "You know what I've got to do with you? I have to hand you over to the Nazis." He said, "They're not going to kill you immediately. They will want to know first who helped you." And he said, "I have never known of even a strong man who could withstand German torture. Not only will they kill you at one time, that you will bring also down, unwillingly, all the people who helped you." He had a cup on his desk with tea or coffee, and it was steaming. He said, "Let me give you some advice. One day you'll be recognized again. They'll turn you in for a pound of sugar or half a pound of coffee or a pound of meat. Pretend that the steaming coffee is Germany, with millions of foreign workers being forced to work in the fields and in the ammunition factories. If you jump into the hot coffee, chances are they'll never find you. You'll just disappear in the compounds of foreign workers." And then he said to me, "We will put you on a train when the train is already moving, and we'll have the necessary papers for you." And that's what happened. Once I got into a state called Mecklenburg, I was sent to a farm. And that's where I worked in the fields until the war was over.
Auschwitz was to be liquidated. So whoever could still drag their feet, literally drag, went out on this so-called death march from Auschwitz. 40% of the people perished on that march. If you didn't walk fast enough, you were killed. It was just one big nightmare. After walking and walking for a length of time, we came to another camp. It was called Gross Rosen. Here we all collapsed and we said, "Let them kill us, that's it, we don't go any farther." And it was 15 or 20 women laying there on the floor, waiting for liberation. Liberation by death. That was the only thing we were waiting for. Death will liberate us, that was the only thing. On May 1st, a group of inmates came to our camp by themselves without any guard. What's happening? The front is very close. That same day, the SS ladies left us. Now we don't know what to do. For so many years we were taught, go, stay, or do whatever. And now we're left by ourselves. We went out and we came to a little, it was on the edges of a little village called Goldenberg. And there was a barn, so go went to the barn, it opened up, and there were already French POWs on their way home from the camps. And they said, "You'll see later on in the morning we'll be liberated by the Russians," and sure it was. To the best of my knowledge, my oldest brother was shot trying to escape from the transport going from the bunker to the railway station. The second brother died on the front, fighting with the Russians against the Germans. My sister and sister-in-law were killed in Maidan. I assumed that my mother and father died in Treblinka. My youngest brother never came back from the army. When he was drafted into the Red Army, he never came back. So I still don't know today what had happened to him. I, of course, assumed that he was killed, either on the front or trying to go back deeper into Russia. I don't know. All my little nephews and nieces. There was a transport of Jewish children taken by the Red Cross, asking the Allies to let them bring them into England. It was denied. They were brought to Theresienstadt, from Theresienstadt to Auschwitz, where they had perished. This is the story of my family.
I remember Mama telling us a few days after the war started, Some Christian friend came to the Kovno to say that my grandparents are no more, that they were murdered on the second day. And Mama said it in a voice, you know, Oma and Opa are no more. Lazar was in Dachau. He survived but died a couple of years later. Gerard also was in Dachau. He died very, very young because of his Dachau experiences. Joseph was murdered on the last day of the war when the regular guards had already left, and there were about 250 prisoners left, and they thought they were safe. Some Nazi stragglers murdered them all. Leo was murdered with my brother Joseph on the last day of the war. He was going on 18. The young people need to know what happened in the 20th century. It needs to be known. It needs to be taught what humanity is capable of doing.
Never to forget, never to forget. Keep on talking about it, even if I'm gone. And keep on talking about what hate and discrimination can do to people. That such cultural, such advanced people as the Germans could do what they have done to other human beings. I keep on saying to my children and grandchildren, eliminate the word hate from your vocabulary. Don't ever say I hate it. Say I don't like it. But don't say I hate it, because hate is the one thing that destroys the hater as well as the one who hates.
I would like to tell them they ought to be, hopefully, without bias, against any person of a different religion or of a different race, that they ought to see people as human beings, and not because you are a Jew or a Christian or Muslim or a Hindu or whatever.
The legacy that I want to leave for you is tolerance. Be tolerant of anybody, no matter what creed, what nation, what color, what religion. We're all human beings, all created in the image of God. And we should get along. You don't have to love each other, but you have to get along with one another, understand one another, try to understand one another. It'll be a better world.